You know what? If you believe the polls, this election, it could be razor thin, particularly when it comes to the electoral vote. What would happen if we had a tie? Let's talk right now to Neil King. He's in Washington, D.C. with us. And we've also got Linda Fowler. She's professor of government at Dartmouth College. She is joining us this morning as well. Welcome to you both. Neil, let's start with this. Some of the recent polls we're seeing, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, we're seeing razor thin margins here between Obama and Romney. How likely are we to see maybe, a tie in some instances here?
Well, let's just talk briefly about the ways that it could happen. There's about 32 ways, if you just take what the two candidates have as their base, and then you play around, which a lot of people are doing with the electoral college math, there are about 32 scenarios that are not that wildly implausible. The most plausible one of all is Obama takes Ohio, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin. That's not a stretch. And Romney wins Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, Colorado, Nevada, and Iowa. That leads to a 269 electoral college split. And there's a bunch of others, I don't need to go through them all, that lead to a similar 269 split, including my favorite, which is that Obama wins Ohio, Virginia, and the one electoral vote in Omaha, and Romney wins everything else. That also leads to a split. Now, so, we're seeing in all these states being mentioned, unbelievably close polling. And the possibility that they could go either way and end up with this kind of electoral college nightmare is what it would be, is not that wildly out of reach.
All right, so let's say the nightmare happens. Let's ask Linda right now, what exactly do we do in this country if we have a split electoral vote? It hasn't happened often. It's happened a couple of times. What happens then?
Well, I think the most likely thing is that the counts will be challenged in several of the battleground states and that the courts will be weighing in. There have been a lot of court cases already in Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, about the changes in voting registration rules. And those matters are certainly would provide fertile ground for lawsuits. But let's assume that these races are not contested in court. Then the electors meet in December, as the 12th Amendment of the Constitution specifies, and they cast their ballots. And then they go, presuming there's a tie, if all the electors are faithful and do what they were bound to do, then a tie would go to the House of Representatives, and it would be the new House. And right now, if an election were to go to the House, each state gets one vote, and Republicans would be able to elect Mitt Romney. What we don't know is what the new House will look like. Most of the projections are that the Republicans will continue to control the House, but they're expected to lose seats from their current 25 vote majority. So depending on how the different congressional delegations play out, there's some chance that the House could select Barack Obama, but more likely it would be Romney.
And Neil, let me come back to you. Where does the Senate come into play with picking the vice presidential candidate if there's a tie there as well?
Maybe we see a Romney-Biden administration. That'd be a lot of fun, because the picking of the vice president then falls to the Senate. And, by all prognostications at the moment, the Republicans don't appear likely to take the Senate. It seems that it will remain in Democratic hands, in which case the Democrats would be picking the vice president. And who knows, maybe they would actually pick Joe Biden, though I guess they could decide to keep a unified thing going in the White House and pick Paul Ryan.
Now, this all seems like remarkably far-fetched for all of us, in recent years, in recent voting history. But the truth is, Linda, we have seen this in America in the past. Tell us about when it's happened.
Well, you have to go back to 1824 when the last time the House made a choice of president, where they picked John Quincy Adams over Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson, of course, came back in 1828 and won the popular vote and the electoral college vote. We've had split decisions in 1888, 1876, but in the end, there were various negotiations that meant that a winner was selected without the House actually casting its votes.
Popular vote, though, Neil, the popular vote in the end doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't matter. That's the other, I would say, certainly mathematically likelier scenario is that we see what we saw in 2000, and we've also seen a few times going back to the 19th century, which is one candidate wins the popular vote by a point or two, and someone else takes the electoral college. And what we're looking at right now is really that dichotomy playing out in the national polls and what we're seeing in a bunch of the key battleground state polls, where Obama is strong in the electoral college and not particularly strong nationally. And that would also lead to a messy scenario, not necessarily one that would play out in Congress per se, but one that would ripple through the body politic and make it all the more difficult for Barack Obama to be president, with a lot of people saying, as they did for Bush in 2000, that he wasn't completely a legitimate president, not having won the popular vote.
Absolutely. All right. Well, a split electoral college vote. We could have a fiscal cliff. We're in the middle of a hurricane recovery. I don't even know what the stock market would do if all of this came to pass. All right. Thanks so much to both of you. Neil King, he's in Washington, D.C. Linda Fowler, she's a professor of government at Dartmouth College. Appreciate your both being here.